This is Bob Woosley. I'm National Private Equity Practice Leader for Frazier Deeter. And we're here with our second podcast in our Private Equity 360 series. And this is one I'm really excited about. We've got a great guest, a new executive with Frazier Deeter's Transaction Advisory Practice, Rhonda Ratliff. Rhonda, how you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Great. So we're going to talk about service that's been really needed in our practice for quite a while, and that's merger integration service. So, Rhonda, tell us a little bit about yourself, what your background is, and we'll talk a little bit about your service.
Okay, my background, I would say the last 20 years, I've focused in M&A integration, some due diligence work, a lot of Six Sigma process improvement work as well, which kind of fits into what we're doing with integration.
All right, so Rhonda, let's talk a little bit about the process when a private equity firm buys a company. So you have a service that identifies some issues that they may have before they buy it. First, I want to ask you, what's the difference between what you do in that little phase versus a traditional quality of earnings review? And then I want to talk a little bit about what happens after they buy the company. So let's go first with, how your service complements or is different than a quality of earnings review.
Right. So it really just kind of dovetails on to the financial due diligence piece, the quality of earnings. And we call it comprehensive due diligence. So what we're really doing there is taking a deeper dive into things that are not necessarily directly financial related. So we're looking at any environmental issues. We're looking at, the sourcing processes. We're looking at the IT systems. We're looking at other functions other than just looking at the P&L and balance sheet.
Which is so huge because they end up coming in and buying the company and they find out they have an environmental issue.
Right.
Or they have, even though a lot of due diligence on the front end of that, they may have a broken IT system that is about to crash. Like, what happens after they buy the company? What do you do to help them?
So taking a step back, that information that we get during comprehensive due diligence does two things. First of all, it does identify the risk, any other things that are potential negotiating points, and feeding into the valuation for the final offer.
So they could renegotiate the deal based on what you find on that operational. Even though the Q of E team verify the quality of the earnings, you may have found some hotbed issues that they can negotiate the deal.
Exactly.
Okay.
So that's one thing, but then that information also feeds into our integration planning so that we're able to vet and have very realistic goals on meeting those strategic goals that were set forth for the acquisition and also realistic goals for synergies. So,
right.
And then we're able to actually realize those in the time frames that we've set forth. So instead of, if you don't have a very robust integration process, then what you're likely missing is synergies and, system integrations and that kind of things that make the business more efficient and effective. You're, maybe setting those goals for 18 months and you may not really realize those until 3 to 5 years out.
Yeah, those are the horror stories we've been hearing, that a private equity firm will go in or a strategic buyer and they think they can get those systems ironed out like in 8 months, 9 months, and it ends up being a nightmare.
Right.
And so having a process that you have step by step identified on the front end is, I think, what they're looking for. Because a lot of as you would agree, that a lot of these private equity firms just don't have the operational expertise in-house to go deploy it on every portfolio company they buy. And that's
or
why,
the resources.
Or the resources, right. Excellent. That explains it a lot better for me. So you and I have talked before about the difference between like a strategic buyer and a private equity firm that's buying maybe a company for the first time, and they're seeing that as a platform that they're going to add other companies to.
Right.
Can you describe a little bit about the difference between, I understand the synergies, where a larger company's buying a company and it's trying to integrate that target company into the systems that the bigger company already has. What about a private equity firm? What are you normally seeing with them? Are they, trying to change the way the company's already doing things, like amp up the technology platform, bring in new management? I mean, can you describe some of the work you do there with private equity acquisitions?
Yeah, there are probably a couple of different approaches, at least in my experience. One would be that they're acquiring a business kind of for a turnaround, that they're really trying to make more efficient internally and, beef up the revenue and beef up the bottom line. So that's kind of more of an optimization project for us.
Yeah. Okay.
And then the second one would be they're buying a company that they're intending to then go out and by additional companies to roll up into that business.
Right.
And that's really where the
platform
integration
deals.
service, right.
Yeah.
And that's really where the integration services become more effective for them. So in that case, we would be able to help them put together a very clear integration framework that could apply to all the, subsequent businesses that they're going to roll up into that one platform.
Right. Well, we see the platform deals all the time. Excuse me, where, a private equity firm buys, a company, say it's doing $30 million of revenue and $5 million of EBITDA, but they know that they can roll up 2 or 3 others.
Right.
So, and I've heard private equity firms going, man, it's a mess.
Right.
We know it's got incredible value, but we need to go in there immediately and start changing systems, put a CRM system in to do these things. If they don't have, you've got a kind of a phased approach when you're doing this, but what happens when a private equity firm tries to do it on their own? They do a lot of this on their own, but what are some of the pitfalls?
From a high level, it could be doable, but what really ends up happening is that there are a lot of misses on cost optimization that you wouldn't even really think about unless you had somebody come in and really analyze the systems and processes.
Okay.
So there are that kind of things, but there are also synergies with duplication of headcount kind of things. So headcount reduction opportunities, sourcing synergies, facility roll-ups. There are just so many different things to look at, and we have a very robust process to really kind of analyze each of those areas and really kind of come back with some recommendations and some high-level synergy models that we can share.
Yeah, because a lot of the firms we work with, typically don't have that kind of operational diligent or integration resources in house.
Right.
So they're looking to somebody like you to come in and do that. For the listeners, we've had a lot of demand for this. And that's why we're so excited about it, because it's not just the revenue recognition and the financial due diligence and that's good. And we're happy to provide that. It's like, what happens next?
Right.
They've just written a big check and off they go. And they're trying to roll their sleeves up. Sometimes they're bringing management in,
right.
To try to do that. But I'm really interested in learning more about your phased approach, when you're going in and letting the private equity firm kind of, go to one phase, then the next phase.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, and we can do, based on their needs, we can totally customize these packages that we offer. But the first phase is really coming in, doing a very quick kind of interview and some data analysis on where some of the big hit cost savings opportunities would be.
And this is before they buy the company. This is at the letter of intent stage, right?
Exactly,
okay.
Exactly. So it's looking at, cost reduction opportunities and then maybe some revenue uplift, which could include cross-selling, upselling, bundling of products, that kind of thing. So there's kind of a, maybe 3 to 5 day engagement there that would give them a report to kind of have things to think about and dig deeper in. The second one would be including that first phase, but also include developing their very repeatable and customizable integration framework. So that means that for this platform, we can put together, customize based on their business, this framework that they can use going forward with the additional businesses that they're going to roll up into that platform.
So if it's a company they're just buying and they're not planning to be a platform at all, it's really more about cost savings,
right.
And about getting that EBITDA moving in the right direction, and maybe some assessment of existing personnel. Do you do that as well?
Right. Well, then the third phase, this would include really the management of the full integration. Using that framework, we would apply that to the business, and we would help manage the full integration. So it's kind of a project management, very detailed, getting into the different functional areas.
Like for first 100 days, plan. It looks like this, and
exactly.
Next, okay.
So, and that would include all the, analysis of headcount reduction, sourcing opportunities, facilities opportunities, and so forth, and then building actual detailed action plans around those.
So, do your clients hold you accountable to hitting those milestones? Are you managing that process?
I'm managing the process, and I'm working with someone internal that's accountable for making sure that we are, number one, that we have vetted the synergies and cost reduction opportunities, that we vetted those very clearly, that we have buy-in from management.
Yeah.
And that I'm helping them manage through that process to make sure that we're meeting those goals.
So you're reporting back to the private equity firm or the strategic buyer, okay,
Correct.
we've hit this milestone, or we need to deviate and go this route. So that's the framework and the critical path scheduling that you do, right? That's it. That's really interesting. Well, what are some of, can you talk a little bit about some of the success stories that you've had, and then we'll kind of wrap up and go from there.
Probably one of the biggest success stories from a dollar value. I was brought in by General Electric Power Systems at the time, now Energy, for one of their acquisitions for a wind business. Mm-hmm. And they had set forth, a number of synergies that they thought from a high level that we could meet. We were able to do a deeper dive, validate all those, but we also found an additional $30 million in sourcing synergies for that business that they had not. And it was really because we just drilled down to the component level, found some leverage, some buy leverage across the different sister companies. And we were able to implement those, and we realized those over an 18-month period.
It's interesting you talk about the sourcing synergies, because I've always, in our private equity relationships, they own a portfolio of 15 companies. Do you ever see them trying to go get sourcing synergies for certain common services across that? Like, hey, let's negotiate on behalf of our whole portfolio.
Right.
Maybe it's insurance coverages.
It could be outsourced services, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Payroll outsourcing, different components that we look at for that across businesses.
Yeah, that would be an interesting thing to talk about with our clients too, is maybe taking a look at the entire portfolio and say, hey, here are 5 services that you could negotiate. Because I've seen some firms do that, but I've also seen other firms kind of let each portfolio company make their own decision.
Right.
Which is fine.
Right.
But I could see you're adding value in that.
Absolutely.
So the last thing I want to understand a little bit more about, you're a Six Sigma black belt, right?
That's right.
That's the GE methodology. Can you talk a little bit about what's involved in that training?
Yeah, so it really actually started with Motorola. GE adopted it in the late 90s, I would say. And it's really a methodology it's a very detailed, robust methodology that kind of goes through different tools and different analysis tools and different ways to kind of look at data and figure out what the root cause of the issue is. Mm-hmm. And then finding ways to resolve that issue and making the process more efficient, more effective. So there are cost savings. They're not always hard dollars, but there are cost savings in optimizing a process so that you take 2 days of manpower as opposed to 5 days manpower. So you're really reducing costs and making the process more efficient.
Well, that's great. Well, what I'm excited about, you, Rhonda, and you're joining the team is that, we had this, great transaction advisory practice and still have that with the quality of earnings. But I'm so glad we're able to bring this to our clients on the integration side, because that's where it seems to be the biggest pain point for them.
Right.
That they have operational issues. It takes them longer to get a company going the direction that they want it to go. After they buy it. And it just seems like having a dedicated resource like you that's managing the process is huge for what they're trying to achieve. And that's ultimately increasing value.
Right.
So that's great.
Absolutely.
Well, we're excited to have you here. Rhonda, I would like to invite you back maybe 6 months from now. I know you've just kind of gotten going here at FD, but talk a little bit about some of the things you're doing and maybe some updates. Is that a good plan?
To. Okay. Absolutely.
Great. Now, for all of our listeners, please hit our website, contact us directly. We're www.frazierdeeter.com. Rhonda, your contact information will be part of our mailer going out, socializing this podcast. So thank you very much.
Thank you.